of a little different twist on things. First part is immediate past president Michael Young of Denver. He's live in Sparks, Nevada at the ASC Region 6 and 7 student competition. He's going to kind of give us a 5-minute tour of what's going on there and kind of share with us all that weren't able to attend. Followed with that, we have our learning program, Business Etiquette in the World of Architecture, presented by our current president, Thad Goodman. And so with that, Mike, at the end of Thad's presentation, if you do want your learning unit, because this is a CEU presentation, be sure to fill out the survey. We'll get it registered and certificates out to those who want them. And then the other part of exciting news, if you saw the CSINext newsletter or visit the website, we've gone mobile. We actually have an app that is available for the iPhone, and we're looking at about a week or two available for Android if we don't have any other hiccups. But instead of going to a web page, just take out your iPhone and log into the app, and it's all seamless, same login, everything else like that. All you have to do to download it is just from the App Store, search for CSINext. And then, of course, what we always want is to grow our network, and the best way to grow is we need you to be involved, and hopefully you'll consider joining if you're not a member of CSINext. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike to begin the live presentation from the ASC.
Thanks, Daniel. Like Daniel said, I'm in Sparks, Nevada at what's called the ASC Region 6 and 7 student competition. It's 6 and 7. Obviously, it tells you that there's more than one region or one group of students that is doing this. Region 6 and 7 covers the Southwest, Northwest, and West regions from CSI. So those chapters have joined together along with Institute to promote this. What our job here is to basically help the educators, give them the faculty and sponsors resources to teach their students. I encourage anyone that's interested in helping the construction industry side of our family to look up the ASC, it's the Associated Schools of Construction, find the region in their area, and see how they can get involved with helping the student teams. This competition give you some sense of size. There's 3,000 people at this event right now, 19 states with 53 different universities. Right now, we have a total of 1,540 students competing in front of about 1,400 different general contractor people. General contractors include some small companies we all know like Kiewit, Clark, Hensel Phelps, Granite, and so forth. And these groups get together and basically interview these students like they were doing a job interview. Give you a sense of scale. This right here is the ballroom where the industry representatives will be having dinner tonight. That ballroom was filled last night with students. So it is a large gathering. One thing I just want to point out is how mobile CSINext is. One of the things I love about this chapter and am passionate about is we are everywhere. We can be everywhere, anywhere, and hopefully you guys take advantage of that. As Daniel said, if you're not a member, highly encourage you to join CSINext. And also I'd like to give a shout out to Thad. His leadership on the Academic Programs Committee at Institute was one of the leading factors in getting CSI involved in this important event. So Thad, thank you very much for your leadership in that realm. And I encourage everyone to reach out to their local schools, whether it be a 2-year, 4-year school, see how you can help. Join their Academic Programs Committee, join their professional development boards. I tell you one thing I take away from this every year is how optimistic it makes me when I leave. These kids are bright. Our future is in very good hands. So with that, Daniel, turn it over to Thad.
Before you run away, Mike, you got one question. Is the University of Cincinnati there?
No.
You do?
No, we do have universities from all over the country here. Alaska showed up for the first time this year. We have Florida State and several. They do come here because it's one of the larger competitions. And so the job fair, which is held Saturday, is really appetizing for them. So, but no, again, there is a region, probably a region 4 or 3 that has that school. And I guarantee they've got a competition of some sort or some event. So go to asc.org and see if you can help out.
Cool. All right, Thad, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
All right there, Daniel. Just wanted to see what you can see here. There we go. Does that make sense? Oh, I think I've cut Michael. I think I've cut him off.
I'm here.
Okay. Well, I could see Daniel talking, but I couldn't hear him. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate the opportunity to get a little look behind the curtain there. Cincinnati is not there, but Auburn University is there. Purdue University is there. Illinois State University is there. I'm looking down through the list. Virginia Tech is there.
Yep.
So as we start looking at the list, most of them are, oh, I see the University of Cincinnati on the list.
I'll have to look harder.
34.
34. Yes, they are. They're new this year.
There we go. Okay. We've got some local representation. So thanks to whoever asked that question.
And what I'll do is I'll see if I can sit in one of their interviews and let you know how they did. I'll report back.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you. Between you being there for the type of overview that we get, I mean, I'm excited about that program. This is actually the 9th year we've been there. We've presented it at the lunch hour on Friday, which is a big deal. CSI has a presence there. We've had a strong presence there for almost a decade now. And then I also want to have a shout out to Daniel and all the work that he did to get the app loaded and to get us online with an app. For those of you that are more mobile inclinated, is that a word? Is inclinated a word? Inclined, I guess I should say. Feel free to jump on the Apple Store and download that thing. I did it last night, and if I can do it, anybody can do it. So today we're going to have an abbreviated program. It will give you a learning unit. We're going to spend a little time talking about business etiquette in the world of architecture. This is a program that was originally put together for the CSI academies and was presented both in Indianapolis in 2014 and again in 2016 at the last academies we had out in San Francisco. So it's been modified a little bit and brought up to date since we're in 2020 now. 2020, we've got a little bit of change that we've gone through. And the overview here basically is to give you the opportunity as a product rep. If you're a product rep and you're calling on architects, there are some do's and don'ts. There are some things that can make you more effective. And the whole idea is to give you a look into how the architectural community might view you with some of the things that you do. This program was put together with the help of David Proudfit, FCSI, CCS, CCCA of the Proudfit Associates in Cincinnati, Ohio, since we talked a little bit about Cincinnati on the call already, and myself and a couple other product reps and one other architect, but primarily Dave and I. So as we think about business etiquette, we start with sales etiquette because we all have to have a conversation at some point. As much as the internet is a wonderful thing, as much as we like to do everything we can with a click of a button, at some point we still have to have a conversation. And having a conversation is much easier when your personal hygiene is well within check. As you start to think about meeting with somebody, you look at the picture on the screen. In the middle of the screen, you got some people standing next to each other. Regardless how hot the day is, it's always nice when it's fragrant. But meetings, face-to-face meetings, a lot of information. We do a lot of driving as product reps. We spend a lot of time moving around from place to place. And so as we think about technology, cell phones are a huge key that we have. They're a fantastic tool. Obviously, we just talked about how we can have more access to chapters like CSINext with an application that we can download and we can see what's going on a regular basis. But as we think about driving, we want to be safe, number one. No texting and driving. Stay away from those social networks. When you're trying to drive, you don't need to be upset about anything other than the guy in front of you and the guy in back of you. And try not to get too close to the guy beside you. So etiquette is an interesting word. Um, there's not really a rule book as we think about what we consider to be the norms of society. You know, etiquette is really just more or less about making people feel good. You know, can you interact with other human beings and have the information be positive? I'm a member of the Chicago chapter as well, and one of the reps up there, we had a recent conversation where he found out that I didn't drink, and he goes, "Oh, and you're still fairly pleasant to talk to. How can that happen?" Um, you know, being a drywall guy, we don't have the best reputation for that sort of thing. So it's basically just a positive way of being, not a real set of rules of do's and don'ts, but there are some general things that you can and can't do. One of the first things you want to do is have a true conversation. And when you're talking to somebody, you need to have a plan with how you get into the conversation and what you need to do. We seldom just burst into a room and start to spew the most important information that we have. You know, there's a conversation, there's a beginning and a middle and an end to most conversations. It's important to know who you're talking to and where they stand in the process. I have a piece that I use when I talk to my other salespeople. You know, listen with the intent to listen. A lot of people listen with the intent to speak. And you all know what that's like. You'll be halfway through a sentence and the other person's already starting to answer what they think you're going to say. So it's important to basically listen with the intent to listen. Communication is all about receiving as much as it is speaking. Interestingly enough, sometimes it's tough to pay attention. Nice sunny day, you're in a warm car, nice to tilt the seat back, get yourself comfortable. You need to be focused and pay attention. If you're face to face, focus on the person's face. You know, they talk about 60% of somebody's communication skills are in the eyes. So look in their eyes and make sure that you see what they're seeing. You see the emotions that they're feeling. And the other thing that's important is if somebody does compliment you, you know, I've seen people defer compliments and basically reject compliments. It's important if you get a positive comment from somebody to accept it, say thank you, and move on. The complaint department. We've all been there. We've all had that happen. There's all been those tense situations. Confrontation is a part of our business. Claims and resolutions is a big part of training for the CDT. You need to be aware of how that works and what they do and how to address them from a standpoint of resolution. One of the most important things I ever learned about calling on a customer that had a problem was the first thing I did was when you walk in, it's important to say thank you. You know, a complaint isn't always just there to be, it's not always a nasty thing. If a customer has a complaint, that's their way of saying, I'm not as pleased as I'd like to be. I still want to do business with you. How can I help? So say thank you. How can I help? Be there, be sincere. You know, ask what the scope of the problem is. You know, when we walk out as product reps on a job, or we walk into an office where there's a situation that's rather tense, it's almost like being a detective. You need to get the whole scope of the problem. I'm in the drywall business. So when I go out to a job site, if they say that there's a problem with the drywall, I'm constantly looking around the job site as well. Maybe they say the drywall is wet for some reason, but it's rained for 27 days. There wasn't a roof on the project. You're not supposed to have drywall on it, and it's sitting right underneath a drain. Well, yes, I think the drywall is probably wet. How do we handle that? How do we work with that? So make sure that you understand the scope of the problem. Make sure that you understand what the customer's expectations are. Have a conversation about how we got to this point, and then we can start to offer solutions. And solutions have to be two-sided. Everybody has to feel like they got something out of a solution. It's a negotiation for the most part as we start to think about how we work through anything where there's confrontation. The important thing, another thing to learn about confrontation is you have to go back through the stress, through the crisis to get to the other side. So if you've got some Tension, you're going to have some tension probably to go back to the other side. So you just need to keep a positive attitude and work through there. You know, we talked a little bit earlier, we touched on personal hygiene. Interestingly enough, when I go out on a job site, I do not show up in a three-piece suit like that top picture. I actually worked with a fellow that came from the corporate office once, and he came to the job site. We met in the hotel room early that morning, and he had a suit and a tie on, and I had a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and a cooler, by the way. It was about 85 degrees that day with nice hot sun. I was going to fill it with some soda and some water. And he goes, "What are you doing? We're not going on a picnic." I said, "No, sir." I said, "The first thing you're going to have to do is lose that tie. Because if you show up in a tie and a suit on a job site, you're either the IRS or the INS, and neither one of those people are real popular on a job." So we got him under control, and then we went out to the job site, and the first thing I did was dig into that cooler. The guy's working out there, nice hot day, drenched in sweat, offer him a nice cold bottle of water. We had about 3 minutes to talk to him. So understand when it's important to be in different attire. By the same token, if I'm going to go into a major architectural office in a large city like Chicago or New York, I'm not going to go in a pair of jeans, and I'm not going to go in a t-shirt. I'm going to be dressed to the nines there. I'm going to try to dress at or one step above your audience. That's a good avenue to think about when you're thinking about etiquette for any kind of a sales. And then something as silly as just chewing gum. You know, I've seen people that chew gum that look like a cow. No drugs, no smoking, you know. Drinking is sometimes acceptable if you're in an industry event. It's not unusual to have alcohol. Know what your limits are. Be conscious of where you're at in your day. Make sure you don't get out of hand. Driving is another. You know, pulling into the parking lot, something as simple as pulling into the parking lot. You don't know whether it's the principal of the office that's out there getting out of his car, or whether it's the cleaning guy, whether he's the guy taking out the trash or the owner of the company. So having the appropriate vehicle clean, uncluttered, no bumper stickers, no signs, not unusual to be, you know, you're coming into work, you're coming into a place to talk to somebody early in the morning. They might have somebody coming in at the same time. You're fighting over a parking space. You may be fighting with the person that you actually are going to be meeting with in about 4 minutes. So be conscious of where you're at. Make sure that you're always in a positive attitude and you're doing the right thing socially. Meetings. 5 minutes early is on time is late. If you've set a meeting, you should be, you know, when I go, especially a place that I'll reference Chicago because I travel Chicago. When I head to Chicago for a meeting, it's not unusual for me to plan to be there a half hour, 35 minutes early. I'm not sure where I'm going to park, not sure if there's security in the building, not sure if I have to get to 1 or 2 levels of security or some sort of a gatekeeper to get to the point where I can be at the point where that person who wants to see me, I'm there. I'd rather wait 15 minutes on them than have them wait 15 minutes on me. That's not a good way to start. Once I'm there, I want to listen. We all want to listen to what the architect or the customer, the project manager, the specifier, the owner of the building has to say. And when you're asked about a product, you want to be knowledgeable and you want to know your competition as well as you know yourself, as your own products, and you want to be honest about where you fit. I had a situation where I had a sound issue and I recommended somebody else's product. And about 4 months later, this firm had another sound issue and they called me and they said, "I'd like to use your product on this job." And I said, "Dad, this really isn't the right application for us." And I gave him 2 other products. And he called me a third time and I gave him a different product for a different situation. And he said, there was this Paul Harvey pregnant pause. And he said, "You're not much of a salesman, are you?" And I said, "I beg your pardon?" And he said, "Well, I've called you 3 times and you've given me somebody else's product every time." And I gave him a pregnant pause, a Paul Harvey pregnant pause. And I said, "Well, you're still calling me, aren't you?" He says, well, yes, I am, because I know you'll tell me the truth. And I said, sir, now that we've done this dance and you feel like you can trust me, let me tell you where my product does fit, because by the times that you've come to me, I can realize that you might not have a complete understanding of where we fit. And at that point, then we started to do some regular business, because he was comfortable enough with my knowledge of the industry and my awareness and my integrity that he felt like he could trust whatever I said. And we've had a solid relationship ever since. Use the elevator rule. Time is money. Think about riding up in an elevator, how quickly, without hurrying, without having to do a Roger Rabbit motor mouth, how quickly can you get your message across, and then be willing to sit and listen if there's questions. I try to keep my meetings to a relatively short amount of time. I don't go in and just sit down and take my coat off and stretch out and get comfortable. Everybody has a job to do. We spend as little time as possible getting what it needs, and spend as much time as possible listening and answering the customer's questions. And if I make a commitment to get back with someone, then I'm back with them on that time. Presentations. As a product representative, one of the important things that we can do to let the entire office know that we're subject matter experts is we can go in and we can do a presentation on a specific product or a spot in the job where we are a good fit for our company. It's important that we provide learning units, preferably HSW. If your company has those, that's a great thing, because those are all required to a certain extent. There's a certain percentage that needs to be done. And then when you get in front of the group, you should have planned and prepared and practiced quite a bit, to the point where if something happens and the screen goes black, the notes don't work, there's a disruption in the office, you should be able to be stopped and be able to move right back into your presentation without having to have a lot of upset. It's not unusual for me to send an overview of the program to whoever plans the meeting, as well as a bio, so they know who is coming to speak. It's important to ask each office if they have any special dietary needs. My wife is gluten-free. We're very careful about where we eat, because if she's got an opportunity to get something that's not there, within about 15 minutes, I can tell. I would never want to do that to one of my customers. Certainly don't want to do it to my family, but I would never want to do it to one of my customers. And always make sure that you have enough food. It's more important to have an extra lunch that you could leave behind, especially for a receptionist. Some firms don't allow that to happen, but if there's an extra one left, they can have a meal. Be on time and on time. A lot of firms, most firms, don't pay their employees for the lunch time. They're doing that learning on their own. The benefit for them is they get credits for their licensure, but they could get a meal of some kind. So you want to make sure that you have a decent meal. And then also, most of them are there on their own time. The last thing you'd really like to do if you want to be welcome back in an office is have the principal come by and see 30 or 40 people sitting in there at 1:15 or 1:30, realizing that he's just lost a half hour of productivity. Not a good idea. If it's an AIA presentation, you need to be generic and be industry specific, not product specific. Allow time for questions at the end. Questions are important, for two reasons. One is, if people are getting some information and they have a question, you want to make sure that they have the complete understanding of where you need to be used and what the product can do. And you can also kind of gauge how much people are paying attention by whether there are any questions or not. And then respect the property. You're a guest in someone's office. You wouldn't go to a home that you would visit with one of your friends and leave a mess in their living room. Take good notice of what the room looks like when you walk in, and when you leave, it should look the same way. rearrange the chairs, push them up where they belong, make sure the TV's turned off if they have a big screen TV, because once you unplug your things, it typically goes black, but that doesn't mean it's off. These are the little things that will help you have an opportunity to get a return visit. And then if you've promised learning units of some kind, make sure that you deliver them. The actual presentation itself, make sure you have your own equipment. Well, a little bit of pre-work, a little bit of a phone call. There's always the logistical questions that are asked before I go into a firm. What's your setup? What's your office setup? Do I need to bring a flash drive, an HDMI cord, a VGA cord? Do I need to bring my own projector? I always have my information. I always have my stuff there. If I get there and their TV's broken for some reason, I can still do a presentation with my projector. And then whatever visuals you have, whether it's something you're holding in your hand or it's something you're showing on the screen, it should complement your presentation. Everything should have a flow to it. Once you get into that learning mode, everybody should have an opportunity to easily follow along with the presentation. And if they get a text or an email or something where they have to look down at their phone, it shouldn't be hard to pick back up again when they get back there. Depending on what you're presenting, sometimes samples are of use, or some sort of a paperwork is of use, or there's a follow-up email that's done. So think about what fits into your program. You know, if you're an interiors person, obviously you're going to have much more visual things than you will someone like myself in the drywall business, where everything that we put on there is fire and sound protective, and it's going to get covered up anyway. Trade shows. Trade shows have a life of their own. You know, Mike's basically, for the lack of a better word, he's a student competition, but there's a piece of it that has a trade show part to it. So it's important to always be ready to receive somebody to your booth. My local CSI chapter, we put on a trade show, and I'm one of the organizers of it. I'm one of the people that works on the committee, and we have certain members, as myself and 2 or 3 of the other organizers walk through the show. We can always tell the guys that's going to complain about the fact that he didn't get any foot traffic, because he's the one sitting in his booth, looking down at his phone in the back of his booth, paying no attention to anybody that walks by, expecting the customer to come up and tackle him and pull him away from his phone to get some information. Invariably, that's the person at the end of the day who will say, I really didn't get a lot of leads out of this show. Okay, well, I can probably pretty much tell you why. When someone does approach, feel free to shake hands and smile. Give them a welcoming sense of being in your space. If you have a name tag, always put it on your right shoulder. Most people are right-handed. You're going to be shaking there. It gives them an opportunity to take a look, take a quick glance at your name tag without having to search for it. I don't answer my phone when there's someone in the booth. They can leave a message. Voicemail is a wonderful thing. It still works. Much to my kids' chagrin, they think it needs to be immediate. I'm familiar with where everything's at in my booth, and if somebody looks over my shoulder and points, I pretty much know what they're looking at. I also know where my competitors are, if they're at the show, if they're there for some reason, and actually if there's a reason that I would need to send somebody to my competition. I want to know who's at that booth, and I want to make sure that they're going to be well taken care of, and I will recommend that they go, no, this particular product won't work for this. This particular competitor has a wonderful thing. So-and-so is over there. They're 2 rows over. They're three booths down, whatever it is. So feel free to make sure that you're giving your customer the complete information and being professional in the way that you do it. Talking to someone on the phone gives us an opportunity to tell them something else about us. If you leave a message, make sure that you leave the message of who you are and the reason you're calling, perhaps even a good time to get back to you. Make sure you give them your phone number. Even if you know they have your card, they might not be sitting there looking at it. If they're mobile and you're mobile, it's much easier for them to have a number to call you back. Avoid speaker phones whenever possible, especially if you're traveling, even if you're just riding in a car. Call waiting. I've never put a customer on hold. If I'm talking to a customer and someone else calls in, they just need to leave a message. As we're on a video conference calls like we are today, it's important to be able to have some interaction if needed, or to be sure that you're speaking clearly so that everyone can hear you. Cell phones in public in general, I try never to call anyone from an airport. That doesn't mean if they call me, I won't call and apologize immediately. I'm sorry, I'm in a very loud place. If you'd like to, I can call you back at another time. If I'm in a meeting, if we're in meetings, important to step out of the meeting. If it's an important call that you need to have, that you need to address, step out of the meeting and not interrupt everyone else in the room. By the same token, if you've got someone else in the room, iPhones and Androids, they pick up, the speakers on those things are fantastic anymore. And if there's someone talking in the background, number one, it might be proprietary information that the company doesn't want you to have out in the public space. On the other hand, it might just be hard for that other person to hear because they're hearing two voices. So when we drive, hands-free, even if I'm just talking on the phone, we've got a hands-free option for our company vehicles. And anytime I ever get disconnected from a customer, if I don't feel like we were done, I will immediately call back, even if I have to leave a message just to say, just wanted to make sure we completed the call. So again, these are just tips and tricks just to let people know that you care about them, that you're interested in them, that you're interested in their business. Email is another one of those things that we all deal with on a regular basis. Understand something in the subject line. Put something in the subject line that gives your customer an opportunity to quickly identify project number, such and such and such, addendum, update. Something like that, so that as that person is scrolling down through the vast amount of emails that we all get and trade back and forth, text, whatever it is, they can quickly identify what it is, and they can identify if they want to deal with it right then or if they have to deal with it a little bit later. They've got 3 or 4 things going on. If there's a required action, if there's something out there that needs to be addressed immediately, let them know. I'd really like to have some information where this is concerned. And then I tend to be guilty of this last one. I tend to write a book occasionally, and I'll do my best to say, please excuse the length of this email from the very start. I will highlight bullet points in the middle of it. As we go down through, I'll put it in segments and people can skim over it. Okay, I don't need to know about what's going on the roof. I was interested in the wall part of this project. Boom. Before you ever reply to all, be aware of who's on the string. Be cognizant of what you're going to say. Make sure that you keep it professional. By the same token, if you're asking someone for something, give them the opportunity to decide if they want to do it for you. I get those emails occasionally that say, thanks in advance for doing this, when I have no intention of doing it. And I always want to just ping them back and go, no, thank you. Thank you, but no, thank you. And then probably one of the most important things you can ever remember when you're dealing with an architect or a customer of any kind, you should never put anything in writing you wouldn't say to their face. And you should never put anything in writing that you wouldn't assume that everyone is going to see, including your boss. Another trick and tip is to be able to read your email before you send it. Is the spelling correct? Is the grammar correct? Are you sending it to the appropriate person? have you capitalized everything you need? Does it look professional? The overview of this slide is, does it look professional and does it get to the point immediately? And then again, anytime you put everything in all capitals, you put a different tone on that email. I love to talk to people. I spend as much time as I can calling someone as opposed to reaching out professionally or proactively with an email. I do my best to follow up afterwards if there's something that I felt like we needed to cover again. And then this one is a big one as we think about social networking, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I've got a good architectural friend of mine, and she has 2 Facebook accounts, and one of them is her personal account, and one of them is her business account, and never the twain shall meet. I don't actually have a Facebook account, so I don't know how all that stuff works, but I found that to be a very interesting anomaly. I thought that was pretty smart. She's a grandmother, and she has lots of pictures of her babies and grandbabies that she wants to share with her friends, but she doesn't feel like that's appropriate for the people in the business world. And then it's important to make sure that when you do post anything, you're sending a consistent message. You're not doing it because you're tired or angry or intoxicated. Try to stay away from that. Choose your friends carefully. It's important to know who is in our network and be aware of what we're saying, and when we're talking about it, to be as positive as possible. It can be direct links for conversations that are a little more risque or a little more confidential. I think we get ourselves into trouble nowadays because we let everybody know everything about us, and there are some things that are just best to be kept private. And again, the last line is important. Don't put anything on a social site you wouldn't want your boss to see, even maybe a future boss, because everyone's going to be checking your social media accounts from the HR department before you're hired. Big difference today as opposed to 10 years ago. A lot of tips and tricks here. Daniel, I'll throw it back to you if we have any questions, anything anybody wants to comment on.
No other questions came in. Can you hear me okay? My headset died on me in the middle of your presentation. So
no, I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Yeah, I had to break rule number 30 microphone, so hopefully no one's listening in. No, good presentation, Mike. You have any closing thoughts from ASC?
No closing thoughts.
There.
What? That's all right. It's all right. No, I'm trying to figure out how to turn this device back on. No closing thoughts. Just I do encourage everyone to reach out to the schools in their area, online or to whatever department. If you're near your school that you went to and attended, again, see if they've got a program that you can help out in. It's you get as much out of it as you put into it. I will guarantee you that.
Great. Encouraging words, Mike. They really appreciate them. Thad, enjoyed the presentation. I know it was geared probably a little more towards the product side, but a lot of good tips for everyone, I think, across the board. So really appreciate it. And everyone, thank you for your time. And when I end the meeting, remember a survey will pop up, and go ahead and fill it out. It's 3 questions, and if you need a certificate, say yes. If you need it registered with the AIA, please include your number. If you don't get the survey from your web, it will be emailed again to you tomorrow. So with that, hope everyone enjoys their afternoon, and thank you.
Download the app.